Welcome to Fox Soul's Black Report, your daily source for Black news, views, and opinions. Happy Friday. Today is October 7th, and I'm Mimi Brown.
And I'm Romeo.
I'm Demi Lobo. And on today's report, President Joe Biden taking his first steps toward decriminalizing marijuana. A campaign promise that he made to millions of Americans, and he's encouraging governors to take some similar steps. Meanwhile, WNBA star Brittney Griner's wife speaks out on her wife's mental state, stating that she is not okay, as a hearing in Russia nears on the appeal of her 9-year prison sentence. Then, Kanye West finally breaking his silence after controversial White Lives Matter shirts made its rounds online in a new interview. And Soulmates, we have that story.
Yes, we do. Plus, 3 entrepreneurs from South LA have teamed up to buy a piece of their neighborhood. We'll talk to them about how this is benefiting the community. And comedian Ron G joins us today with a recap of the hottest headlines with a side eye. We have all of that and so much more. This is Our Voice and Our Truth, so let's get it.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We start today with news on legal reforms. President Joe Biden is pardoning thousands of Americans convicted of federal marijuana possession.
As I said when I ran for president, no one should be in jail just for using or possessing marijuana. It's already legal in many states, and criminal records for marijuana possession have led to needless barriers to employment, to housing, to educational opportunities. And that's before you address the racial disparities around who suffers the consequences. While white and black and brown people use marijuana at similar rates, black and brown people are arrested, prosecuted, and convicted at disproportionately higher rates. So today, I'm taking 3 steps to end this failed approach. First, I'm announcing a pardon for all prior federal offenses for the simple possession of marijuana.
It's a step toward decriminalizing the drug. Now, he's also calling on governors to issue similar pardons for state charges. Biden saying no one should be in jail for using marijuana or possessing marijuana. Critics say pardoning marijuana offenses is the wrong move. So the forthcoming pardons, they are set to clear convictions of some 6,500 people who had federal charges of simple possession of marijuana from 1992 to 2021, and thousands more who were convicted in the District of Columbia. They will also be pardoned. You know, marijuana right now is currently listed as a Scheduled 1 drug, and Scheduled 1 drugs, those are they're reserved for the most dangerous types of drugs. I'm talking LSD, heroin, ecstasy. And so right now, Biden says that his Justice Department will work with the Department of Health and Human Services to review how marijuana is classified, and that will also help when future people may get in trouble for a marijuana simple possession.
Yeah, I think the declassification of marijuana is very, very, very important. I also love that he's calling on other governors to do the same on the local level. He's saying, hey, I know that I'm up here, but also down in the individual cities and states, you can do your part as well to join this fight that he's in. You know, this is going to help so many black and brown men and women that have had to go to jail, waiting to stand trial, that have been to jail before, not able to get housing, not able to get work opportunities, not able to get educational opportunities because this is holding them back. So one, it's really happy that he's doing it going forward, but also righting the wrongs as well, because those people are now going to be able to hopefully have this wiped out and have a much better future.
Look, talk about another win for the Biden administration. Just having this conversation before the midterms to give people of color hope and say, you know what, maybe this is the guy. Maybe the Democratic Party is what we want to make sure they hold the Senate and the House. And I'm sure most people want that. But you are going to have those people that's going to push back against this. But you're right, Mimi. It should not be in the same category as those other drugs. Because if this is something we're legalizing across the country, maybe these steps should have been taken before we even started legalizing marijuana to begin with. So many people have lost years, days, months, families and friends due to this.
Absolutely. And really quick, just to point out that other people who could be affected could be those who were arrested in such places like airports and federal parks, because that also falls under federal law jurisdiction. So that should be good too.
I love this. Great job, President Joe Biden. Now, Cherelle Griner is speaking out, and she says that WNBA star Brittney Griner is at her absolute weakest moment in life right now, as she faces a hearing in Russia later this month for her appeal of a 9-year prison sentence.
It's like a movie for me. I'm like, in no world did I ever thought, our president and a foreign nation president would be sitting down having to discuss the freedom of my wife. And so to me, as much as everybody's telling me a different definition of what BG is, it feels to me as if she's a hostage.
Mm-hmm. Cherelle Griner nearly coming to tears discussing the state of her wife on CBS Mornings. She went on to say that she's had 2 very difficult phone calls with Griner since the WNBA star was arrested in Russia. The first time that she says that she was delighted to hear her voice, but the second call, it worried her. She says you could tell that she was not okay. Griner remains in a Russian prison ahead of her appeal on October 25th. So Cherelle Griner said that Brittney Griner is saying things to her as if it's starting to worry her. She's saying things like, my life doesn't even matter anymore. I feel like my life doesn't matter anymore. And that's when you start to get worried, because it's been about, I believe it's been 7 or 8 months since she got a chance to have this phone call and talk to her wife, Brittney Griner. But when you start having a person having seemingly suicidal or seemingly my life doesn't matter type of verbiage, that is when it gets into a whole nother different state. And, you know, I like that she also brought in Trump, too, because if we were talking about President Trump or someone that was at the top of his list, I don't even feel like we would be having this conversation right now. They would have been home by now.
That's a very good point, Demi. That's very interesting. You know, Brittney apparently also told her wife that she's very afraid of being left alone and forgotten about. And I think that's a very real issue, because here in the United States, you know, we move from one headline to the next really, really quick. And so I think it's going to be incumbent upon us, people in the media, to kind of do like we had to do with Breonna Taylor, and that's keep her name alive and say her name and all those things, right? And I also think the WNBA needs to do some sort of initiative where they're always keeping her name alive, even in the off season and things like that, because it is a very real threat, because we move to the next news cycle really, really quick, and someone like her could actually really be forgotten because of the way the cycle moves here, and something is just always happening, and we want to make sure that we don't do that. I think another concern is that her wife said that, you know, after the hearing on October 25th, she could be moved to a Russian labor camp. And that is just scary to even think about.
Way more scary.
That's way scary to think
That's something we don't want. We don't want her to be forgotten. I hope the NBA, as they jump off their season coming up in about 10 days, that they continue to say her name and make sure that we push to get her home, because this is just living proof how life can change for you in an instant, right? You know, she's over there going over there making a living. She's giving back to that country. I said this the other day. And in return, this is what she gets. You know, no priors, and this is what happens. 9 years, the max was 10. Totally not fair, and we would not forget her. Yeah. All right, well, the House committee investigating the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol set their next hearing next week on October the 13th. It will be the panel's first hearing since this summer. They planned to hold the hearing last week, but canceled it due to Hurricane Ian. They've said this hearing would, quote, tell the story about a key element of Donald Trump's plot to overturn the election. When that hearing gets underway, we'll have more to share with you both on air and online.
And a new report found a staggering lack of racial diversity among top staff members in the U.S. House of Representatives. Despite people of color making up 40% of the country's population, only 18% of all staffers and upper management in the House are people of color. Now, that's according to a report by the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies. The report found that 23 of the 308 personnel offices in the white representatives are led by chief of staffs of color. Now, 13 of those work for Democratic members. Now, at the same time, 80% of black staffers, directors that were hired for full committees are employed by the Congressional Black Caucus.
And the attorney for a black man serving a virtual life sentence for shootings that he committed at the age of 17 has asked the Washington Supreme Court to reconsider a split ruling that upheld his sentence. He says the leniency granted to white defendants in similar situations was not granted to him, revealing racial bias. Last month, the court upheld the 61-year sentence for Tonelli Anderson, who was now 45 years old. Back in 2018, the justices held that it violated the state constitution to sentence 16 to 17-year-olds to life in prison without parole. That ruling came in the case of Brian Bassett, a white man who killed his parents and brother when he was 16. Now, Bassett was sentenced and resentenced to 28 years.
Dante Wright's parents are now at the center of a lawsuit along with attorney Ben Crump after the mother of his only child claims her son has not gotten any money from a GoFundMe account that raised more than $1 million. China Whitaker says while her son was promised half of the GoFundMe proceeds, but he hasn't received it. The Wright family launched the fundraiser days after Dante was killed by a Brooklyn Center police officer last year. The lawsuit claims Crump promised donations to the Dante Wright Sr. Memorial Fund would be split evenly between Wright's family and son. Crump was acting as Whitaker's legal counsel at the time, but Whitaker says she has not received anything from the donations, leaving Wright now, their 3-year-old son, with nothing.
Black leaders are pushing Governor Brian Kemp to suspend the sheriff who allegedly fondled Judge Glenda Hatchett. The Cobb County Solicitor's Office charged Sheriff Chris Cootie with misdemeanor sexual battery after he allegedly grabbed Hatchett's breast at a law enforcement convention in Atlanta last year. According to reports, he put his hands on the judge's bosom to show her that he was from the heart of Georgia. Reports continue to say that someone had to pull Cootie's hands off of the judge's breast. The sheriff has not disputed the claims, but has expressed his regret.
Black advocates are saluting a House resolution recognizing Haiti as the first free black nation, but they are demanding the U.S. to take accountability. The resolution also acknowledges the first historical harm caused by France after Haiti successfully gained its independence in the early 1800s. It draws a direct correlation between Haiti's current economic and social challenges and the independence debt that was forced to pay France after winning the Haiti Revolution War. Described as a double debt, Haiti has been embroiled in poverty for decades and still reeling from that crisis, including the impact of 2 significant earthquakes in the last decade, political corruption, high crimes, and the 2020 assassination of its president.
A white former cop who killed a black man at a Texas gas station 2 years ago is a free man today. An all-white jury acquitted 24-year-old Sean Lucas of murder in the fatal shooting of Jonathan Price. Civil rights attorney Lee Merritt says the verdict may have been influenced by the bias of the jury's part. Price, who was a former college football player, got into a shoving match with another person as he was leaving a store at the same time. Lucas was dispatched to the scene. Witnesses say Price walked away from Lucas, who was trying to arrest him. The former cop used his taser, then shot Price with the gun. Price was unarmed at the time. Very, very sad story there.